Hello, this is Cate Sword, and I'm going to show you my presentation about the material lab. And we're going to see if we can make something that you can't believe it's not leather. So, a little bit about who I am. I'm a certified interior designer. I went to Michigan State and I took my NCIDQ. I started using AutoCAD in 1984 and now version 2. So I've been in this world for a while. I started training in 1989, so before a lot of you were born, and I was a trainer at CAP. So that was before it was 2020. So I worked there for 8.5 years as a CAP trainer and tech support. Then I started my own business, and my business, Cate Sword Consulting Plus Design. I'm an independent consultant. I do training still, obviously, and a lot of different types of projects. In 2006, I started training for CET, for Configura, and started training CET designers. So that's been 17 years I've been working with this tool. Now, I have been to every single CET conference, and I continue to keep going, and I hope to see you all at future ones. So let's get started. I have a lot of content to cover in a little bit of time. Always too much content, not enough time. So I'm going to go fast. So what I'm going to show you is different material types in the material lab of the standard versus PBR. We're going to create some standard materials. We're going to create a material from an object. That's a new one. We're probably going to be able to do a great deal of modification to a PBR material. And then we're also going to create a PBR material from scratch. I'm also going to modify some images to make for better tiling. So here's the project. We have a client who here's the room that we rendered for them. They're like, well, we want these walls to be accessible beige. It's a paint color that a lot of people use. Frankly, it's the color in my house, and I've seen it in a lot of other people's. I love this beige color, right? They say, well, we have this sofa. It is not that color. It is a Knoll red ruby fabric, and so we're gonna do that. They want this little ottoman, which is currently I drew a SketchUp object in here. They want it to have the same fabric as these two OFS chairs. And then they want to see at the wall, this wall in the back wall that I did is actually brick. And they want to paint it with this accessible beige as well. The leather sofa that they have is not white. It is a dark leather. And the ceiling, although it looks lovely with this white, is actually a copper tin ceiling. It's an old one that they rescued and they're redoing. So I'm going to have to make all these materials in here. So let's get started on the materials. The first one we're going to talk about is like what the materials are. So there's a standard material. It's been around since the beginning of Configura's rendering tool. It uses 5 different properties, right? Primary, specular, reflection, opacity, and bump, but only 2 image files. So the image files are only used here and here, which means that if you have a material that has different opacity or different reflection, you're not going to get that effect. The whole thing is going to be equally reflective or equally opaque or specular. PBR materials are a material that's been around for a while in the gaming industry, and so we're starting to use them here. They actually have 7 material properties that you can use, and all 7 of those can be images. So what that means is that, like, let's say the bump, that's the roughness. I mean, that's the texture of the material. Oh, let's go with roughness instead. I'll talk about that. So roughness means that, let's say that I have this tile material. The tiles themselves are shiny, but the grout is matte. In a standard material, you can't do that. But in a PBR, there's an image that says this part of the image is shiny and this part is matte. So by using these images to sort of separate that all out, you get a much, much better rendering image. The downside to all this is obviously with all these images, it's gonna be a little bit slower. So you're not always going to need to do a PBR. Plus, if you only have an image of the color, like of the major thing, you don't really need to do a PBR because you don't have any of these other things. So we'll talk about both types and how to make both. Another neat thing about the PBR materials is that you can change this color in here, and we'll get into that to talk about how to change the color. It's really easy. Okay, so first thing, I need my accessible beige. right? I went out to the Sherwin-Williams site. I looked up the color. I said, oh, here it is. And when I got to their website, I was kind of amazed. They actually told me what the RGB is. So the RGB for accessible beige is 209, 199, 184. And that's pretty cool. And also there's a hex value if you wanted to type it in. So I'm going to use the RGB. And let's go to CET and do that. I'm click happy, aren't I? So here's my room drawn with the SketchUp items and the images. I'm going to go into the Material Explorer. And I've got all the materials in here that are from different manufacturers, and I'm going to write to the Material Lab. In the Material Lab, I noticed it started right off with just a plain gray material. And let me just do a quick overview of the Material Lab. Across the top are the different shapes that you can look at. So I can look at it in this little weird sphere on the base. I can look at it as a cube. This cube, and this is important for you to know, is 1 meter by 1 meter, okay? So when you do a material stretched across here, you're going to need to make sure that the scale is correct. Otherwise, it'll stretch that material to be a meter by a meter. You have a couple different versions of it you can look at. The reason that there's a right and a left sort of image is on the right, you can render that over here. So quickly, you can see, I mean, this is gray, it doesn't really do anything. You would there be able to see the reflections, the shadows, things like that, okay? As we go down through here, at the top, I'm going to give this a file name. So let's call this accessible beige, right? And maybe I'm going to say that this came from the Sherwin-Williams website. The neat thing about that is when you're in the Material Explorer and you hover over it, that will pop up instead of just the same name. That's what's going to pop up. I'm not going to make this a PBR yet because I really only have the color. I also am not going to make it double-sided. Double-sided means that they're going to put that color on both sides of every face. I'm only painting the outside. Watch if I roll in, you'll see that the back of the box is transparent. And that's because it's only on one side. You really don't need to do that unless you're doing something like a sheer or a curtain. Now, I'm going to put these in a category, and a category is really important to understand. The categories are how these are going to be organized in your Material Explorer. This is not a subdirectory. This is a category. I always put my categories in like Cate's stuff, right? Or I might put them in a folder for my harem, or I might, because this is a paint for Sherwin-Williams. If I didn't have one, I could go all the way to the bottom and click and say new and create a material category for that. I'm just going to throw it in my regular Cate stuff for right now. And then I get down to the next section where it says color. Now I could do a color or a texture. That's going to be an image file. We'll get to that next. Obviously, I don't want it to be that. I want it to be a color. And since I was given 209 on my tab, 199 tab, 184, there's my accessible beige. I think it looks great. I'm going to go on down. Now, is accessible beige paint specular? Does it have a sparkle? If I were doing this as a trim paint with a high gloss, I might put a little bit of specular on it. All right, not a lot, but when you put a little bit on here, let me render it real quick and see if you can see, it'll put a little shininess on the corners. See that little white right there? Okay. But I don't think my paint's that shiny. Maybe it's eggshell, so I'm going to take it down. Oh, just a tiny bit. And when I render, it will have a little bit of reflection, but not much. Okay? Or sparkle. That white. It doesn't have any reflection. My paint doesn't reflect. If it were something really shiny, or metal or something like that, then I could add reflection. It's not opaque. If I put it as opaque, you can see how I can make it, like if this were a sheer or like maybe some window glass, you can do that. I'm not going to make it opaque. And then I could add on here a bump if I needed to. So like, for example, isn't that neat? Where things are black, it makes it insert, go deep. Where things are gray, it's less. So you could put in here a file with a texture and it would have a texture. I'm not going to on this one, but I will on the next one. That's all it is to make this paint. I need to give it a name. And so I somehow, when I did this, I accidentally got rid of the name. So let's make sure that that doesn't have a bump. All right, so we will put in here accessible beige. All right, cool. File, save. Where am I going to save this? This is super important. You need to always save your materials in the same directory. It's not about, you're always going to put it in a CET materials directory. By default, CET puts them in material drop folder. I prefer them in a different folder, so I made one under reusable files called CET materials. And so this is where I'm going to keep it. I always have a whole lot in here, so I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And there's my paint. Okay, close out of my material lab. Let's go to Cate stuff. Sure enough, accessible beige. Let's paint that wall. Looks pretty good, right? Now they also said they want this sofa, or I'm sorry, this lips couch. Isn't that the best? It's old classic sofa they had. They want that to be in a Knoll red velvet. So I went out to the internet and I searched under my harem, and under my harem I typed in red velvet, and guess what it came up? Knoll Textures, Digit Velvet, and here's my ruby that I like so much. We don't have time for me to kind of walk through and show you how to download an image, but trust me, go out and save this. Some materials under my harem actually have JPEGs that you can download of each of these. This particular one did not. And so I just clipped it. I have snag it, so I snagged it and saved that image, right? I have it on my on my hard drive I put it in my let's see, I'm going to put it in my CET documents under all textures, and then I have a folder where I keep these, my harem, and there it is, KT Red Velvet JPEG. And if you look at it, you can see, let me bring this over. It's a pretty lovely velvet. It's got some texture to it, right? It's a textured velvet. And so what I'm going to do, after I've downloaded it, let me go back to CET, and I'm going to make a material, a standard material. Let me make a new one down here at the bottom. And if you want to, if you're like, I'm a little bit nervous that I'm going to have some of the settings from the other on here, you can right click on that material and hit reset. So it just made a copy of the one I was doing. Now this doesn't have any settings on it at all. It did seem to keep the name, but that's okay. So I'm going to, first I want to put this in a category. I'll put it in Cate stuff today, but I made a folder. I'll put it in my harem fabrics. So I'm going to put it in my harem fabrics, right? And I'm going to call this Knoll KT Red. No, it's actually Ruby Velvet. All right. And typing is not my strength. VET. Okay. And I could put that I got this from the website. And instead of a color, I'm going to grab a texture. And now I'll go browse and find it. So it's in my documents. I put them in CET documents, and I put them in my all textures. I have a lot of things I've downloaded over the years, so they're all in here. And there's my harem. And now there's my KT Red Velvet that I just downloaded the other day, right? So let me grab that, and it brings it in. That's beautiful. However, if you remember back to the image I just showed you, right? this image is not, oops, I clicked the wrong button and I bring it back up. This image is not 39 inches wide, all right? So what I'm gonna do is I need to say, it looks more like that would be maybe 12-inch repeat, all right? So let's make that 12 inches. So this is really important. Right here, I'm gonna say from edge to edge, that's 12 inches. Okay, so that's a little tighter. That looks a little better. It seems to be tiling very nicely. And I can hit optimize texture right here, and it'll change the DPI to kind of match what's going on. All right. Now I'm going to go down. It's not sparkly. This definitely doesn't have a reflection. It's not opaque, but it does have a bump to it. It's not flat. If I don't put a bump on it and I render it, it's going to look like basically red velvet laminate. So let's go down here and browse, and I'm going to use literally the exact same JPEG for this. Right now, you can't tell. In fact, let's change it back to color for a second. That there is a texture to it. You see it? And it matches up with my JPEG, but it brought it in at 39. So let's make it match up with my other. And now I'll make it a little bit bigger, maybe. There's some nice texture. And I'm going to turn this back. There. So now I've got this beautiful velvet. I can render it if I want to. Let's see how it looks over here. I'm going to go in and save this to this exact same location where all my other materials are. That looks pretty good, doesn't it? All right, so File. I'm going to hit Save. It's going to go into the exact same directory, my CET materials. I'm going to call it Cate Ruby Velvet, hit Save. And now, back in my Harem subdirectory, my Harem category, there's Cate Ruby Velvet. Let's go ahead and apply that. Looks pretty good. What do you think? Awesome. So we are going to now talk about something completely different, and that is creating a material from an object. This is a new one that people don't do very often, but it's so powerful. I have in my drawing, let me close this for a second. I have these side chairs from OFS, and I did them in Masala amateur grade CF Stinson fabric. Okay. I could go out to the internet and search and do the exact same thing I just did for that red velvet, but you know what? There's an easier way. I've got the chair selected, and I'm going to go up to File, Import, Export, Export Drawing, right? You're like, well, I'm not going to export a drawing, am I? No, you're not. You are going to export an object. You probably never noticed, but there's a lot of different types of files you can export as. I'm going to export as an object, okay? And this object, I'm going to put in, let me put it in my desktop. I have a folder for this demo. I'm going to put it in my demo folder, all right? Just so you can see what files exported. And I'm going to call this OFS chair, all right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And it says, what do you want to export? Well, right now it's going to try and export the whole drawing. So let's just filter, and grab just the selection. I just want to export this chair. Okay. I'm going to leave it at medium. I'm going to click OK. And then let's go to that folder, demo, and look what it did. Here is that fabric, right? I can't click on it. Do you see it? Looks pretty good. It looks like to me, this is about a 30-inch repeat. So we're going to go with that. And back to CET, all right. I'm going to make a material explorer, my material lab. Let's just make a copy of this. I'm going to click new, and we're going to call this, I forgot the name of it already. I think it was something, let's bring the image in, that'll help me. So I'll go browse, there it is, CF Stinson, that was CF STINSON, all right? And if you wanted to, you might go in and kind of say masala, right? So I'm going to call this masala. Now it's not a Maharam fabric, so I'm not going to put it there. I probably am going to put it in Cate stuff for now, or I might be making OFS materials. I'll just put it here for now. All right. And then I look at this material and I realize that it stretched that little bit of fabric to, again, metric 39.37. So let's say, I think that repeat is only about 30 inches. So let's do 30. It's a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to go down here, and I obviously don't want it to have a bump of, that velvet. Here's a trick that I've found, is when we start going into downloading other textures, you're going to find a lot of fabrics have a texture with them. So in a little bit, we're going to go in to my CET documents and all textures and download a PBR material that has textures. So I'm going to find one. Let's see, there's a fabric. So these fabrics are kind of grid-like. And what I want to find, oh, here's a nice one. And you see right here, it says fabric roughness. And then fabric normal. Let's do this fabric roughness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this fabric roughness. It's a little rough and it's a little bit big. So let's take it down to, say, 20. And I'm just guessing right here. And I don't want it to be that rough, but I want it to be a kind of fabric-y. What do you guys think of that? That's pretty cool. Okay. I'm used to training in front of an audience, so I'm going to go ahead and save this file, save, Simpson Marcella, same directory, save. I'm going to go ahead with the high DPI. It's okay. Let's go to Cate stuff. CF Stinson Masala. Excellent. Let's place it on this cute little pedestal. Okay, something is terribly wrong here, friends. The material is on there, but can you see that it's so super tiny? I could have sworn I had the scale right. What this is that SketchUp symbols don't always do what you want them to do. So I'm going to go in, if you have a SketchUp symbol and you apply the material, and this happens to a lot of things, I'm going to go into my edit graphics and I'm going to make this symbol editable. It still looks bad, but now when I click on the symbol, I'm going to use a tool called the Mesh Dialog. And there's a cool tool called Auto UV. Somebody needs to look up what that means. I don't remember. I just know it makes my fabric look fabulous. Auto UV, watch when I click away. Fabulous. So that is and if you have a problem, so I did an export, I did the filter selection. If the material doesn't go correctly, go on down to, oh, and there's the material I downloaded. Go on down to Edit Graphics, make it editable, go to the Mesh Dialog and click Auto UV. Very cool. All right, let's go back to the drawing. Oh, next we're going to do a material. We're going to use a PBR material and modify it. I've just modified my regular materials, but now it's time to work on a PBR material. So they said they wanted that brick, but they also wanted that brick to be painted with accessible beige. Okay, so in the material lab, I have in my material explorer, I have some brick. I think in the wall section, I found a white brick. This is the nice white wall brick. And, when I paint the wall, it's white painted brick, but I don't want it to be white. This is where we get really interesting is I'm going to double click on this wall. So it opens it up in the material lab, right? I'm going to make a copy of it. And I am going to, and it's a PBR already. And the way you can tell it's a PBR, one, it had PBR after the name right here. But when you're in in Material Lab, you're going to see that it is in a curved background. Similar types of things. You can make it round, cylinder. I'm going to go with the cube on the wall, right? And I'm going to call this my brick accessible BAGE. All right. It's already using an image called wall base color, but because it's white, I can change it. So watch what I'm going to do. Type in my RGB. Remember, so 209, 199, and 184. Look at that. Accessible beige. I don't need to change anything else because this was drawn correctly to start with. If, for example, I looked at my drawing and I was like, these brick are too big and I wanted to scale it, I certainly could modify it further in here and scale the brick right here. So maybe it's going to be, 6 inches, or let me count these tiles, 1, 2, 3, maybe, well, actually it's pretty good right now. But it could be different size if I want it smaller. I could make it opaque. There's a bunch of things I could do, but I'm happy with this brick, aren't you? So I'm going to go up to the top. I've already named it. I'm going to put it in Cate stuff. I don't normally like to put it back in the category that I got it from, mostly because if it's in the wall category, I don't know personally if I created it or it came from Configura. So this way I know this is the material that I personally created, right? And so I'll do File, Save, putting it in the same subdirectory on my machine, my CET materials. I'm going to hit Save. Now I have accessible brick, right? And you can apply it from right here if you want to, right to the, oh, that looks good. Let's imagine that you went in here and you had a PBR wall that you liked. The brick on this one was more what you were thinking, right? So you had a PBR and it was, maybe it was this one. It was this hex, right? And they're painting this. So I go and I type my number, 209, tab 199, tab 184, but it does not look good, does it? It's not quite the accessible beige color I want. Now I can see that the ground seems to be, but not the tiles. Well, that's because they actually have a wall base color image in here that is that gray color. And there's a really neat trick. If you scroll down, you can see that they have, this isn't hard to see, but the metallic is there. That makes it a little shiny, right? The roughness is there, all right? The bump is there. But if I take the color, the base color one, if I delete this file, I gotta put my numbers back in again. It removed it, 209, 199, 184. I now have painted accessible beige shiny tiles. So that was the trick. You get rid of the texture file that had their base color in it, so you can apply yours. So I like to make my materials, if I can, white, because then I can just apply my colors. If I had made my material, my base color, a color, then when I would have to remove it. So I like to, when I make my materials, I like to start with white, then I can add color to it. I'm not going to save this one. I just wanted to demo that for you. So, oh, and you can change the reflection too. If you wanted to bring it down just a little bit, you can change the color and the size. Now we're going to do a real PBR. We need a good leather. I've gone through the whole, all of the materials in there, and there's just not a great leather that I can use. And so we're going to go out to the internet. This is really a great resource for you, is that if you go to Google and you Google PBR, free PBR material, you're going to come up with a lot of different resources, because the PBR material is what the gamers use to build their games. So they're always making new ones, and a lot of them are exterior materials, like you can see in this image. I tend to use Ambient CG. That's the website I like the best. There's textures.com, free PBR, CG bookcase. These are just 4 of many. Everyone has a favorite. I'm used to this one. I'm going to go and open up that website so I can show you. So if I go back in here and here's all the assets, and there's a lot. If you go to the home page, they'll say there's 2,449 assets. And there's HDR backgrounds and all of your materials. Of course, search is going to be your best bet. So let's search for leather. And there are a lot of leathers out here. Let's say, and here's a white leather and a brown leather and different materials. And maybe I'm going to do like just this plain leather right here. When you click on it, it gives you off to the right those files that you would use to make a PBR. Remember, there was color, displacement, roughness. Now this one, leather doesn't have an opacity, so there's no opaque JPEG. Remember I told you you could have 7 different ones? Well, the ones that you need are here, plus a few other files that we won't be using. It also gives you, in this particular program, all the different levels of leather. Like I can do it just a 1K leather or 2K, like much higher resolution, all the way up to 8K. Now, I'm going to say I don't need 8K. I don't need this to look like that good. You might go with 1 or 2. I generally do either level 1 or level 2, because look at how much file it's adding to your drawing. 7 meg, 210, 734 meg to your drawing. You do not need your drawing to be this slow. So I'll do, let's say that I'll do the 2K, right? And what it does, the minute I click on it, it downloads those images for me. I go up here and let me click on that leather. All right. And here are the files. This is a zip file. I'm going to extract them. And I'm going to just put them in my demo folder so that you can find them. I have a PBR directory, but there's a lot of stuff there already. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in my desktop, in my little demo folder, right? And then I'm going to hit extract. So let's look in that folder. If I go to desktop to demo, these are the files that I've exported. Remember the names, like leather, 03, and it's 2K. All these, like there's the color, the normal, the roughness, all right? Let me go back to CET for a second. I'm going to make a new material in the material lab. And I've got a new material here, and it is a PBR. I'm going to reset this so there's nothing in here. We can look and see, just double check. I always like to double check just in case it didn't delete everybody. But it looks like all of the images are gone. All right. And here's the fun part. I love this part. You can drag and drop. I can take the color file, see where it says color, and put it in the color area. So that means that it's going to have the appropriate JPEG in the appropriate area. So let's drag and drop. And it says, do you want to load the associated textures? So that's going to be the roughness, all those other ones. And I'm going to say, yeah. So what it's going to do is take those files from that same folder and bring them in from that same subdirectory I saved them in. It's not metallic. Here's the roughness. It's kind of hard to see, but it's there, right? Here's the bumpiness, how bumpy it is. And there's not really, it's just really those three. Remember I said that there weren't any others that were like shiny or any of that. So there's my leather. But I think the image of it, let me just double click on that. That feels like it's too big almost. Like this, how big? Well, that's not going to give me anything. That's just the color. It just looks like the scale is wrong. Like I wanted it a little bit smaller because it did do that thing where it stretched it out, but I don't know what size it's supposed to be. So let's look back here on this. They didn't tell me what it's supposed to be. Sometimes, if I go back, I'll show you one that does. I was just looking at this one. This one, when I use this, it tells me that it's supposed to be 30 by 30 centimeters. And if I typed in 30 by 30 centimeters, then it would scale correctly. So this is a time when there's an actual pattern that you could go in, and for the base color, you would change right here to 30 by 30. Let's say that it's the same for this leather, right? So if I do 30 cm and enter, it's much smaller, which leather is. That's usually a very tiny grain, right? And then what I can do is, I'm going to make sure I name it, leather. And I usually name it the same as what I downloaded from Ambient CG. So this is going to be leather 37 2K. I like to put in here that I got it from Ambient CG, and I'm going to put it in again in my category of Cate stuff so that I know where to find it next time. All right, file, save, put it in that same directory, leather 37, and then let's go ahead and apply it. And when I do that, when I go to apply that leather to this, it's defaulting. It's hard to see. Let's do it this way so you can see it better. It's defaulting to the whole symbol, which means the pillows would be leather, the feet would be leather, and I don't want that. So I'm going to use my tab key to tab down to just the leather. And now when I hit enter, I can do that. I could also go and maybe at this time go and put the Maharam, red velvet on the cushions, right? So textile. But I'm noticing that this leather did the same thing that the cushion did. It made it very tiny. So again, I'm going to grab that. I'm going to go to Edit Graphics. I'm going to make it editable. And you see, it doesn't really do much to it yet, but then when I grab on it and I go to my mesh dialog and I pick auto, I need to make sure I select the whole symbol, by the way. So there we go. Select the whole symbol and then do auto UV. And if you want to learn more about this whole edit graphics, there's lots of sessions on edit graphics. So this is a really good one to blend different ones together. And now you'll see, look at that. Can you see the leather grain? It's perfect. And the cushion is better. I think that maybe this symbol needed the same thing done to it. We didn't notice it because it's just red, but let's do it too. Come on, grab both those. Auto UV. Oh yeah, that looks much better, doesn't it? All right, we're almost done. The client says, we also need the ceiling to be tin. All right, so let's look at the PowerPoint. So I did the leather from Ambient CG. I downloaded the zip file. I extracted it. I drug the leather onto here. And I said, yes, I want to associate. And then I did change the scale on it to make it better. And I did that same thing where I went in and used edit graphics to make the shape different. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to make a tin ceiling. So first I went to Google, I searched for an image of a tin ceiling, and I downloaded it. All right, so let's find that image. Let's see where I put that. I believe I downloaded it to my CET documents. Nope. CTX. There we go. It's called White Decorative Ceiling JPEG. Looks pretty good. And remember, I mentioned I like making these white so that I can color them other colors later. So I'm not looking for a copper ceiling, I'm looking for a white one. But as you can see, by looking at this image, do you see there's a dot on this side and then a dot on this side? So if I tile it, I'm going to get like double lines, and I don't want that. So I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to grab down here and just drag it up. I don't want to get any of the black from the background. There we go. So you can see that now I don't have that dot on this side. I don't want to be too aggressive. There we go. And I don't have the dot. There we go. All right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a save as a copy, and I'm going to call it decorative photoline cropped. Okay. So now I've cropped this. So let's see, we're going to make that tin ceiling. And since I only have this one image, I don't need really, I don't think I'm going to go in and make a PBR, but I don't know, maybe I will. Let's go to Material Explorer. We're going to go down here to the Material Lab. And we'll use a PBR, what the heck, right? Let's copy this one. Well, actually, we'll just clear this one because we didn't save it. Reset. I'm going to go ahead and put that image in here. It's easier for me just to go grab it. So documents, CTEX, material, all right, cropped. Well, one, it's still at that other scale. So I need to change this so that it's 40 inches wide, right? But can you see what's going on here? It's really not going to tile well when I use it. In fact, I'll just show you. I'm going to put it on, let me just pop it on the ceiling just to see. Click it here, click there. Tiles poorly. It's got some shadows in it. So this is a bust. I can't really do this just using that image. So we need to go a bit further. All right, so let's do that, okay? I have a tool that I use called PixPlant. There are a ton of tools out there that you can do to adjust this. People can do this in Photoshop. People can do this in, there's a bunch of other tools people suggested to me. I've been using this one for quite a while, and so I kind of am a little bit more comfortable with it. It's $37 for 2 licenses for life. And it does great tiling issues, but it also, you can create your own PBR materials. So from here, I could export my base color, metallic, roughness, all of those files that match up with PBR. We're not going to do that today. We're literally almost out of time. But also, if you're trying to learn on your own, this is going to be helpful. They have a lot of YouTube videos tutorials on how to do it. So go watch the tutorials. This is the one that I'm using. I recommend it because I find it the easiest, but you might have another one that you have in-house. Just this is the one I like. So I have it open. I have the program open already. All right. And let's go ahead and maximize this on the screen. So here it is, PixPlant Freelancer. I just bought the Freelancer version. That's cheap. All right. There are sort of 3 different fields going on. There's the symbol, sort of like our rectangle back in the material lab, right? And you can make it different shapes down at the bottom. You can have it be in different environments. So if you want to show it in a house, you can kind of see how the colors are reflecting on it. So maybe I'll do this in a house, or I sometimes do it in a studio because it's pretty white, right? Just a plain white, or, dusk, any of these different ones. So I'm going to do this one. It looks pretty white. It's just a plain white box, but you can kind of get the feel for how it's going to render in those spaces. The middle is where our images go. And I'm going to start with a base color, right? Just like I did in Material Lab. And then there's all these other images that can be generated from the base color. So let's go find that guy. Here's my cropped image. I'm going to just drag and drop. And you can see right away, it did the same thing in here that it did in CET, right? The colors are low, unfortunately. All right. So what I'm going to do, I have a hard time getting it square. There we go. I'm going to go over to the right, and there's all these different things I can adjust. Tiling synth. All right, so synthesis on the tile. We're going to make this tile better. Click on that. What image am I going to use? Well, I'll just use the same one that one is. So the current map. All right. And then what I do, this is you scroll down. And what's my problem here? My problem is my brightness. Now, there are a lot of other things that could be wrong with this, but in this case, I've got a dark side and I've got a light side. And so I am going to equalize the brightness. I'm just going to do a little bit. I just experiment with this a little bit. Can't see anything yet, but then at the bottom, when I hit generate, can you all see that? It's like a miracle, isn't it? It did a great job. Now, it looks like I may have cropped this a little too much. It's got a weird scale to it, but we're going to go with it. I'm going to say that this is good. And I'm going to go, I could go in and do all kinds of other things, but I need to do that ceiling right now. The client needs a drawing. I'm going to go ahead and export it. Right here's export. And it's going to, if I had made any of these other maps, it would have said, yeah, I can export those. And then at the bottom, I'm going to say tin ceiling. I'm going to put this in my demo directory, right? And I'm going to hit export. So it exported that symbol, that image. And you could have played with more white and then bright lightness. Let's minimize this and go back to CET now, to my material lab, and substitute in a better image here. So I'm going to go back to my desktop, to my demo, because that's where I saved it. Here it is. And sure enough, it's all white. That's awesome. Now I'm just going to put it on the ceiling so you can see. Look at that. It tiles beautifully. And this is my cropping that's causing it to do that. But I did say I needed it to be copper, right? So let's go back to the Material Explorer. I'm going to just close out of here. And in the Material Explorer, I need to find a metal. Let's see, here's a metal. And let's see, is there a good copper in here? Antique brass, bronze. How about this copper right here? It's a shiny copper. I'm going to double click on it. It is a PBR. Very shiny copper. And as you scroll down, you can see that it's got the color, which is what, and that's just a color, it's not a texture, right? It has under metallic, it just is one, so it's super metallic. It doesn't have really much roughness to it, no bump. This is going to be easy, right? So I'm going to jot down these numbers, 250, 208, 192, and I'm going to go to my ceiling. And I'm going to type in here, because this is white, I can just type over it. 250, tab, 208, tab, 192. Now it's not very shiny yet. It's still kind of matte. So let's go down here to, remember, metallic? I'm going to turn the metallic on. This seems like it might be a little too shiny for me. So I'm just going to make it half shiny because, yeah. And if I wanted to make it the same bumpiness, I could load in here. Remember under our roughness, I could go in and grab that, the ceiling tile again that I just made. I think it'll go in here. I already loaded them earlier. So now I've got this awesome ceiling tile, and I'm going to go through the same process to save it. But because we are out of time, I'm just going to go ahead and apply it to my ceiling. And there you go. Isn't that amazing? So I went in, I took the image into the tool, I applied it to the color, then I took and I went into tiling, I used my current map, I changed my brightness, and I generated it. Then I saved it as a JPEG or a PNG file, either one, and applied it and finished up making my material. And then this is the finished product. So now we have our whole space with the right color walls, the right color ceiling, and the right sofa. Thank you for attending. If you have any questions, give me a call or send me an email. My name is Cate Sword, and I'll see you next time.